guys, welcome to my Ocean One channel. I just wanted to do a quick video for you. This video is actually out of request. I had one of my subscribers reach out and ask me to do this video. So they asked me to do a video over why a potential buyer wouldn't just wait until bankruptcy, or would the potential buyer be better to just, buy now instead of waiting until possibly Fisker files for Chapter 7 or Chapter 11. So that's what this video is going to be about. Going to be a lot of speculation in it. There will be some facts, of course, but there will be a lot of speculation. So before we get into that, let's get the YouTube disclaimers out of the way to keep me out of YouTube jail. None of my content or statements constitutes professional advice. Viewers that follow any advice, suggestions, content, anything from this channel, do so at their own risk because you are responsible for your own actions. All right, let's jump right into it. Question posed to me was, is a buyer better off buying prior to bankruptcy, of course buying Fisker prior to bankruptcy, or buying after? Now, personally, everything I say here is just personally, okay? It's just my ideas on the matter. So the first thing we have to go back and understand is, how did we get in this situation in the first place? And there's a lot of things that we could discuss, but it really boils down to one central issue, and that was the toxic lending that Fisker had a deal with the note holder. And from my opinion, basically Fisker sold their soul to get the first round of what Gita at the time called non-dilutive financing. That was $450 million, if my memory's right, that we were getting from the note holder. And this was the first note holder. This was not after that. And basically Fisker pledged everything to the note holder, put them first in line. So what happened is when the third quarter rolled around, Fisker missed its 10Q. When that happened, that put Fisker in default with the note holder. At that time, Fisker had roughly 350 million shares. Not that bad, right? Public company, 350 million shares. That's pretty good, all things considered. And all of a sudden, the note holder was able to, at their own discretion, light it up. Basically, they could buy shares for a 20% discount, turn right back around and make a 20% profit. So, simple math. They could buy shares for $1, just making that up. Turn right back around and sell those shares. Actually, I said that wrong. Say the shares are $1. They could buy those shares for 80 cents, turn right back around and sell those for $1. And boy, did they ever. Our share count went from, if I understand the share count right, and I'm pretty sure that I do, the share count went from roughly 350 million shares to now roughly 1.3 billion shares. And that was all due to the note holder being able to take advantage of Fisker missing the 10Q. And if you remember some of my videos, Fisker, the fourth quarter was supposed to end that, and I did a video over that, and then we missed the 10K. So we missed a 10Q for Q3, we missed a 10K for Q4, and the note holder, the cycle started right back over. Technically, it never ended. So the note holder, without mercy, was able to dilute us to death. So why am I giving this quick history lesson? So I can share this from my perspective, which way would be better for a potential buyer. So when you look at the 10K, what do we have? We have roughly $1.8 billion in liabilities. So for a buyer to come in, they would have to pay, without negotiations. Let's be clear on that. They would have to come up with roughly $1.8 billion to purchase Fisker, and what would that leave over for shareholders? That would leave nothing. So from a shareholder's perspective, we would want that to be higher. From a buyer's perspective, they will want to pay as little as possible. From my point of view, the best thing about a buyer coming in and purchasing Fisker prior to bankruptcy would be they would be able to call the shots. They would own the company. They could put Fisker on the path that they wanted it to be on. So now there's a lot of speculation in this because we're dealing with so many variable parts here. You know, that's getting Magna back up in production. That's assuming that the Ocean continues. You know, as shareholders, that's what we would want. We would want a buyer coming in first and foremost. And of course, that would allow the warranty to continue. Okay, what are the problems with a buyer coming in? The share count. I think that the share count is a massive deterrent to a buyer coming in and the shareholders getting much of anything, if anything. I think a buyer here would want to pay as little as possible for Fisker because Fisker has dug themselves into a very large hole in the sense that they've done many things wrong. There was nothing that Fisker ever did wrong that I felt like couldn't be fixed. With new management, with new strategies, with new changes, I always felt like Fisker could fix it. But the note holder really did Fisker in the sense that they just kept diluting. You know, they were making a killing off of this. And they were following the rules that was set up originally, and they were allowed to do this. And so they did it, and they did it again, and they did it again. You know, I mean, just look at our share count, okay? 350 to $1.3 billion, and poof. And what did we get from that as Fisker? Nothing. Really, we got nothing. We just got diluted to death. So I really think that the note holder killed the company in the sense that it made the share count so many. So the reason I'm going through all of this, because I was asked to do this video and I'm trying to look at it from a buyer's perspective. I think a buyer would be wise to come in and pay $2 billion for Fisker. I think that would be a screaming deal for a company that wanted to pick up where Fisker has gotten itself to and then take Fisker to its fullest potential. And I would love to see that. But then you get into time is not on our side. So what is a buyer thinking? I personally think a buyer would be thinking, why pay $2 billion when I can pick this up for $700 million or $900 million or $1.2 billion? And I think that's probably the problem. I think if things were running much smoother for Fisker, had the Oceans been released with 2.0 and there have been very few software hiccups and very few software problems, and Fisker had been a much better, well-oiled machine, as the old expression goes, I think a buyer would be willing to come in and potentially pay a premium. But the market right now is just, it's not what it was 3 or 4 years ago. The market's very different. EVs have been frowned upon, you know, whether that's fair or unfair. Personally, I think it's very unfair. But we get into several problems there. If you just go back not long at all ago, okay, the Fisker Ocean qualified for a tax credit. Poof, that got changed with the IRA. The ASP, the average selling price of, say, a Tesla was much higher. The average selling price of a Tesla at that time was high 60s. And now it's what? You know, you can pick up a Model Y for around 42. So things have just changed so dramatically in the sense that Tesla got to keep the tax credit. They got it back, actually. Fisker lost the tax credit. So all of this has just been one vicious circle, if you will, going against Fisker. So I think what a buyer would probably do here, and this is the way that I lean right now, is that a buyer would wait for Fisker to declare Chapter 7 or 11. Now, I don't think Fisker will declare Chapter 7. I might be totally wrong on that. And I would love to see a buyer step in. And I would love to see a buyer make the shareholders whole. I just don't think that that's probably going to happen here because Fisker just doesn't have enough time. It doesn't have enough money. So I think a buyer would sit on the side and just wait for it to happen. Then come in and scoop up things when I think everyone, except potentially the first note holder, the first note holder is probably going to be made whole, in my opinion. They probably have enough leverage there that they could probably be made whole. But I think after the first note holder, I think everybody else probably won't get much or get a whole lot. And then, of course, shareholders are the last in line. So I think from a buyer's perspective, that's probably the way it's going to happen. I seriously doubt, unfortunately, I seriously doubt that a buyer is going to come in and scoop Fisker up prior to bankruptcy. It's just where we are, guys. It's so unfortunate, and the ocean is such a good machine. But if, and I stress if, a buyer comes in, even in Chapter 11, and we can get our ocean serviced, we can get the ocean back up and running as far as production, those ocean manufacturers, employees, I should say, at Magna can get rehired. You know, people that have been laid off for Fisker can potentially get brought back in and have their jobs back. I personally think at this point that that's probably the best thing that we can hope for, is that Fisker lives on. It lives on through a buyer. But in my opinion, it's going to be tough for a buyer to come in and buy prior to Chapter 11. That's unfortunate. But I think if you just look at the clock, I mean, you know, you're sitting, it's kind of like a vulture, if you will. You're just waiting for the animal to die, and then you come in. And I think that's what a buyer would most likely do in this instance. So I hope that this video helps people, and I hope you look at it from both sides. Is this what I wanted as an investor? Oh, heck no. I wanted Fisker to be rocking right now, you know, total expectations, but just didn't work out that way, guys. Fisker has been decimated from the note holder. Now, we could argue anything that we want to. We could bring up anything, okay? Fisker was slow. Fisker wasn't well organized. I felt like all of that was solvable. But the note holder just absolutely put the hammer on Fisker once we defaulted on the 10Q, and then we screwed up and we missed the 10K. So it just became such a headwind against us that, how would you word it? You might say, trying to think back here. You know, once the speculation started to swirl a couple months ago that Fisker may not survive, what happened to sales? Well, sales dropped off like a cliff. And then at the same time, the share price is going down. So the share price is going down. Sales are dropping off. And then the next thing you know, Fisker is just in a position to where it's almost like perception became reality, if you will. That might be a good phrase to use, because the perception that Fisker might go bankrupt caused people to not purchase Fisker Oceans. And, you know, there we are. So this video was to look at this objectively from a buyer's point of view. Now, personally, I would love to see a buyer come in and say, hey, guys, I'm going to pay you $3 billion, and that leaves $1 left over for the shareholder. That would be fantastic. I just don't think that's going to happen because Fisker is on such a short leash with time. Fisker probably only has, what, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops? We know this, okay? We know this from Fisker itself. So anyway, that was the whole purpose of this video. So I hope you found this video helpful. And I have been following the solar panel on the ocean very closely, just kind of throwing this in on the end. I'm trying to work up a video for that. That's been kind of a head scratcher. In certain ways, I don't want to lead anything into that, but it's taken more time than I expected. So I'll have that video for you. I don't know. Been very busy recently, so a few days maybe I'll have that video for you. Maybe a week. Okay, we'll just kind of see. But as always, guys, thanks for joining in, and I hope that Fisker gets a miracle, and I hope this channel can continue for a very long time. Or I hope that a buyer comes in and Fisker just continues. I think most ocean owners would be thrilled at this point just to see Fisker survive and know that we can get our oceans serviced. So as always, I appreciate you dropping in. I really enjoyed my audience, always respectful contents, and I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, thanks, guys.